I'm Nikki, and this is Built from the Mess, where we talk about the hard seasons, the healing, and how you can still build something beautiful. Hi, guys. Nikki again here, back with more of my success story, because this is a success story. This is where life got hard, hairy, bumpy, and some of this is going to be deep, but I promise this is just part of my story. My story may not always be happy and it may not always be butterflies and rainbows, but I am living proof that your past does not define who you are and that you can build better for yourself. Thanks for sticking with me this far. I hope you continue to want to hear this story and hope you find something in it that you can use or you need or that would help somebody you know. I am living a happy life with my husband, a thriving business, my 5 children, my grandkids. Life is great. Some days are bumpy, but that's okay. Please know that everything that I say is what led me to here. I just want others to know that they're not alone in the lives they live to get to where they are, or that if they're in that spot, that that's where their life stops and that that's all they're ever going to make of themselves. There's more out there for you. I know I touched a little bit in the last episode about my parents transitioning from the oil field to something different, which changed the dynamics of life a little bit and brought me into the more public area of schooling and more in a town versus a little camp area that we grew up in the younger years. My parents proceeded to take on a business venture, doing things that my dad knew how to do, guiding and things like that. But it took on a summer part of a job, which is what brought me to being in a tractor every day, all day. I got put in a tractor baling hay or swathing hay, cutting hay. We did one field, we cut it. Somebody came behind them and baled it. A couple days later, you were usually always by yourself in one piece of equipment or another. I was still young, so I did not have a driver's license or a vehicle or any way of commuting back and forth. I did drive a little here and there, say behind the tractor with my flashers on, just, as a sign of caution for other vehicles on the highways when we had to transport equipment, things like that. So you didn't have to trailer it. These days were also hard being just by yourself at, ages 13, 14, 15, when you're trying to find yourself, friends. You already feel like you don't fit in where you are, and it's tough to not have that time to help. You don't have summer, you don't have where there's no school, you don't have any of those things like that. We were still a little bit isolated from all of our friends. We lived quite far from town, did not see town very often at all. And it wasn't always easy, but there was some fun in that. We did have a trampoline, and most nights, all of us kids, me and my sister, we had cousins that would come out and stay with us a lot. We'd all just sleep on the trampoline. And my dad would come out in the morning and holler, "Hey, let's go make some hay." And everybody would jump up and we'd all get our ranching clothes on and we'd go to work. Some of those times brought fun memories, and I look back on my childhood and think I did have a good childhood. And then there's other times that I remember the fights and the times that were bumpy and hairy and go, I didn't have a horrible childhood, I guess. I guess I can't say I didn't have a bad, because I don't think it's a good thing to watch your parents grow up. I don't think it's a good thing to grow up watching your parents fight so terribly and physically. There was times where I remember some of the crazy. My dad he always wanted to be fun and he would try, and then it would end badly for him. I will tell my kids about the trampoline incident continuously. My dad had some drinks and all of us kids were on the trampoline, and he said, "Jump me up there." And we, bounced him real high, and he landed in a bad spot and bit his tongue and went all the way through it and, rolled off the trampoline and went inside and sewed it back up himself. He didn't go to the doctor. He didn't want to go to the doctor. None of that. So I grew up in a very crazy childhood, I guess. My dad did not believe in doctors and we didn't really go to the doctors a lot. We didn't go to the dentist a lot. I can't say we had horrible health or horrible teeth by no means. We just didn't have to go. And those were some of the, things that I still remember, and I'll tell my kids about it. I also will tell my kids about the things that I went through when I saw them fighting, when I saw them hitting each other, or slamming doors in each other's faces, and things that I don't think your children should see. I wouldn't want my children to see that at any age, let alone a young age, because a lot of times I do believe we sort of portray what we see unless we do what I say I've done, and that is go completely opposite. I have tried to go completely opposite of what my parents did in their marriage and how they fought and in their business, and sometimes even the way I parented my children. Not always. I did take things from my parents as far as how hard they were on us. It made us strong. It made me and my sisters independent. I have two sisters who I believe are also successful and do not have any type of addiction issues. And I think that's something to say. I think it's that we saw something we didn't want in life. We saw things we didn't enjoy, ways we didn't want a marriage to be or have how to be at all as people. The hayfield brought me strength. Some days I became strong. I was 14-year-old young girl bucking bales, toughing it out day to day by herself. And I look back and think I was tough. It also made me very emotional. I do not like being alone at all. I don't want to go do anything alone, hardly. I don't want to drive to another town alone. I don't want to eat alone. I don't want any type of being alone. Rarely do I enjoy even being at home alone for a couple hours if my husband and kids are out doing something and I just find a little peace and quiet in that. That's not terrible. But as far as like if my husband had to go out of town for work, without me, I don't like it. If all my kids are gone and I'm alone, I think that being in a tractor all day by yourself into the evening, and then only a limited amount of time in the evenings to communicate with other people, really leaves you feeling like you don't get enough to say. Some people really enjoy that. I had an uncle who enjoyed every bit of it. He found solitude in it. He loved it. It was listen to whatever he wanted, nobody to complain at him, nobody to say he was needed, anything like that. I felt completely opposite. I felt alone. I felt scared sometimes. Like, what if somebody comes up on me? What would I do? I can't say I was tough enough to beat somebody up. Myself that way. So some days the hayfield brought me strength, and other days it brought me I feel like sometimes it turned me into a person who feels like her story's I'm never done talking about it. I can't have enough to say, which sometimes I feel like I'm a person who interrupts a little bit. And I think that's not a great thing. And I think it comes from that time in my that period of my life where just being all by yourself and nobody to talk to. When you get somebody to talk to, you'll talk because you didn't have anybody to talk to for days. It didn't do that for me in school when I went back to school in the fall all the time. I don't know if I went back to school feeling very shy, very still different. Well, didn't fit in, didn't really know my set group of friends, never really had a specific set group of friends. And I kind of phased in and out of people that I would spend time with. But the last couple years of my parents running this business was very hard. They got really bad into drugs and let it all fall apart. They did not keep up paying bills, did not keep up being the right people to the people that paid to come have services done. And this is when I remember after the season of haying was done, and after hunting season was done, we would move back into our house we had in town. And that's when a lot of just random people would be at our house. People we didn't know. We would wake up and get ready for school and go downstairs, and there would be two people just laid on the couch, and we had no idea who they were. And those are kind of scary times too. I never really felt like those people would hurt me, but I felt unsafe in my own home. I didn't feel like my parents put mine and my sister's safety first. They didn't care who was in their house as long as that person either brought them what they wanted or was helping them obtain what they wanted or things like that. I don't know all the details of a lot of my parents' stuff, and I felt naive. I look back and didn't realize what was even going on for the longest time. Had no idea. I do have family members that will talk about it, some now that said they knew what was going on. They knew what was happening. They didn't want their children anywhere around my parents, at my parents' house, things like that. I can't say I blame them by no means. And they couldn't tell me that. I was still a young girl, not knowing what was even really happening behind some of the closed doors in my home. And my parents started to fight more and more. And I still remember when my parents split. And I can't say that I made my parents get a divorce. I do sometimes feel as though I put the nail in the coffin, as you could say. And I remember a bad fight. My older sister had already graduated and moved away. And it was my little sister and I. And I remember her coming into my room. I was awake. And she said, I can't sleep. They're being loud. And I said, I know, me either. And so we sat there for a while. And finally, I thought, I don't know what else to do but to step in. So I went to the top of the stairs and I sat down and I hollered at my parents and I said, can you guys please keep it down? We have school tomorrow. What 14, 15-year-old girl should have to tell her parents to quit fighting so that their kids can wake up and go to school the next day? I thought it was crazy that that was even happening. As a mom, I think it's crazy that that happened. However, my dad turned into an angry person at that moment, and it was his house, and he could tell me whatever he wanted, and he could do whatever he wanted. And I felt my mom being opposite of that. She said, "I'm sorry. Try to go back to bed. We apologize." And my dad was not in that same state of mind. So of course it became a come upstairs. Both my parents came upstairs. I was trying to tell my mom, it's just you guys are loud. We can't sleep. We have school tomorrow. I'm not sure how we're supposed to get any rest with you guys yelling and it's loud. And she said, I'm sorry. I understand. We'll keep it down. And my dad was more and more angry. No, we won't. This is our house. All those things. He walked toward me and he seemed so angry in that moment that I truly felt like, was he going to hit me? And although he never did hit me, my dad was never physically abusive to me or my sisters. That's what I felt in that moment. And I said, what, are you going to hit me? And it kind of took him back and he stopped and he said, what do you mean? Do you think I'm going to hit you? And I said, well, you seem like you're that angry at me. And he kind of dropped his arms and turned around and he just had an angry look in his eyes and he went downstairs. And I remember 2 days later, my mom saying, your dad and I are done. I'm leaving, and was giving my little sister and I the choice to move away with her or to stay with our dad. And my little sister and I took a lot of time to think about that one. That was tough. We didn't want to leave friends, boyfriends. This was our home. We also knew our dad in that time couldn't give us what we needed as daughters and people who we depended on our parents still. We had no driver's licenses, we had no jobs, things like that. So we needed parents who were going to be able to. My mom had explained very much that she felt as though she couldn't just split from my dad in the same town and it'd be okay. She needed to get away from this town. And so my little sister and I made the final decision to go with our mom. And that was also part of a very hard transition in mine and her lives, both my little sisters. We had to move schools. We had to leave friends behind, both boyfriends behind, things we didn't want to leave behind. We were sad. It was all we'd ever known was this town that we went to school in. And, can't say I had a specific group of friends at the time that I was so devastated to leave, but I think it was just the unfamiliar territory of going to a whole new school. I at least knew people at my school. And so going to a whole new school was very scary. My mom did choose to move to where my grandparents and my older sister were at. So we did have our older sister back in our lives for a small period of time when we moved down there. It was hard. I did not make friends down there easily. I did not talk. I stayed very isolated. It was huge school. I mean, this school for me was huge. I mean, I came from an oil field camp to a general public school in this town that was still maybe only a couple hundred kids at most, a couple hundred kids. And I went to a school that had over 1,000 kids in high school. And it was so scary for me. I was petrified. I didn't want to go to the first day. I didn't know where to eat lunch. I didn't know how to get lunch. I didn't even know where the cafeteria was. It was so hard for me to find footing in that place. I felt like I could come home and talk to my grandparents a little bit, but I still don't think I mentioned much because my mom was trying to heal and grow from this devastating divorce after 20 years from my dad. Those were hard times. We did miss our dad, even though he wasn't the greatest person and wasn't there to help us a ton. We still missed him. We missed friends, although for me, I didn't have a specific group of friends. I think my little sister did. It was a hard time to transition as a teenager that could barely find her footing in the town that she grew up in, for the most part, to find your footing in a town you don't know, you can't drive, it's huge. Things take forever. Your school is gigantic. You don't know the teachers, nothing. That lasted one semester. We came back, my little sister and I came back to stay with our dad for the summer. My dad was very deep into drugs at that time. I look back and I see all the signs, everything. He did have a girlfriend at that time. His girlfriend and him let my little sister and I do whatever we wanted. We ran town all summer, like just did whatever we wanted. We were at parties. We were doing things we had never done. I can't say like terrible, terrible troublemakers. We didn't steal or thief or do anything like that. We did get a curfew ticket one night for being out too late. And my mom still knew a lot of people in this town. And my mom got a phone call that my little sister and I were just running rampant through town. So my mom called and was trying to make plans for us to come back to start school. And we both said, we don't want to, we don't want to. So my mom decided she would move back to this town. And although I was super happy for her, I look back now and wonder if that was the right decision. I know she didn't want to be away from her kids and we didn't want to be away from home. However, it's hard to look back at now because it's also when my mom got back into drugs and my mom had been clean. My mom got back into drugs and then she did end up getting in trouble. Although, yes, my dad ended up getting in trouble too. My little sister and I transitioned from living at our dad's house to living with my mom. She came back, she got a house, she got a job, things like that. And I'm truly thankful for my mom in those times. Although I can't say my mom's done everything right, I do feel as though my mom tried to be what she knew best, and she didn't have much of a role model growing up herself. So I don't blame her. I just think there was a lot of things that she could have maybe done different, but I try not to judge that because I'm a mom and I know how that goes. But those were some really scary times of transitioning. I remember my dad getting busted for drugs, just still going through high school and not being normal. Nothing's felt normal. And then I remember it wasn't long after all that I wound up pregnant with my oldest son, and things got really scary for me from there. I was very scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I knew somewhere deep in my heart that I was called to be a mom. Although I know I did not make every right decision for my children, I did my 100% best for my kids. So I knew when I ended up pregnant that this little person would change my life. And that he did. He truly did. Knew I had to finish school. I knew if anything, I had to finish school, and I was not quite a senior in high school. I wanted to finish school for myself. I wanted to finish school to be able to tell my kids that one day, if they ever thought school wasn't important, I wanted my kids to have an education. I wanted my kids to do better than me. I obviously knew I had put myself in a position of teen motherhood and things would be tough and hard. And although things were already tough and hard with my parents, my family, I said, I'm going to do different by my children, by my child. I'm going to do different. I'm going to change things. And I did try. I did try very hard to be a success and to tell them that everything was going to be okay and that I would provide everything they needed. And later on in this story, you will see that I fell short of that sometimes. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow because I told myself when I first got pregnant that I wouldn't do what I got put through. And although I never went through a lot of what my parents did or any of those types of things, my kids still endured certain things. Now, I think they're better off for those things. I think their life is good. I think that they grew up with a happy mom, and I think that's the most important thing. When I went back to school in the fall, pregnant, I went to the school and I said, I need to graduate at the end of this semester. I am due and I will not be able to come back to school. And I had a lady at the school tell me, I don't know how you'll make that happen. And I said, well, can you give me all these things, all these classes, and I will figure out how to make it happen. And she said, you might just have to quit. There was no encouraging. There was no, you can do this. This school will stand behind you. I did not feel that in any way. I felt alone again. I knew I had to figure it out on my own. And she said, I can give it to you, but I don't see how it's going to get accomplished. And I said, then give it to me and I will figure out how to accomplish it. And I was put into some work classes. I was put into a college class, and I worked as a waitress until about a week before my son was born. graduated in December and my son was born on Valentine's Day. And I am truly proud to say I did that on my own. And it hurt and it was sometimes terrible, but I did it. And I did it not only for my son, but for myself. And I felt accomplished. I felt like I ruled the world, that I did it, because I didn't feel when I was younger that some of those things would ever be able to be accomplished. So I was proud. I was very proud of myself. I went to graduation that spring with a 4-month-old baby in the stands and never felt prouder of myself. But by this time, my dad was in jail and did not get to come. My mom was fairly deeply into drugs and showed up, but didn't look great, didn't seem great. And in the meantime, right ahead of graduation, I was supposed to have a graduation party with my cousin who is the exact same age. And a few of my family members came to me and said that they didn't want to be around my mother. And so I took a stand for myself. I lived on my own at the time and said, okay, well, then I won't be at that graduation party. That can be for him. And I threw myself a graduation party. My older sister and my grandparents visited from out of state, and my older sister helped to get hot dogs and hamburgers and things like that. And I had a little tiny party of my own at my house and still tried to feel proud, but felt hurt by people who didn't understand that no matter how much wrong my mom had done, she was still my mom. And I didn't even get the opportunity to have my dad because he was in jail. And those are some hard things to still swallow sometimes. I don't hold grudges. I still talk to these family members. I still see these family members. I didn't feel strong at some of those times. I didn't feel as though anyone understood what Nikki was going through, trying to feel successful, that she accomplished something that's important. I have been so proud of all my kids who have graduated high school. I can't imagine a family that wasn't proud of a niece or a granddaughter or a daughter that didn't show it. It's kind of baffling to me. So I felt alone again in that moment. I felt alone, that no one knew what I was going through and how happy I wanted to be, but couldn't feel happy. And then I sort of just let that part of my life go. I didn't continue education. I started taking care of my son and working just odd jobs and trying to survive, not really feeling like I could survive. It was tough. And then I got pregnant with my daughter and again kept pushing, kept trying to build a life. By this time, my mom had moved away and didn't live here. I truly don't remember where my dad was at in those times. I think he was around the same area, but I didn't see or talk to him. And those were some of the hardest times. Not having family that wanted to support you while raising kids, while trying to be successful, while trying to defy the odds of what you felt like you got handed in your early life is not fun. That was the feeling I felt so many years, was alone. I felt alone, constantly alone. Alone in raising my kids, alone in building a life, alone in no family being there to support me. I did have a couple select cousins that would come and be with me and befriended me and supported me and loved me. And I am forever grateful for them. And my story changes a little bit here as I chose to move away as well. I chose to move away from here. I thought that it would help me build a better life. By this time, I was raising my little sister. My little sister was a few years younger than me, and by this time, my mom had signed custody over to me because she was not doing well and had been threatened that she was going to be taken away. So I took in my little sister and started to raise her while raising my 2 children. And I was truly made to be convinced that the best thing to do would be to move away. And so I did. I packed up my life and I moved away to where my older sister and grandparents and my mom were at the time, and thought I could build a life outside of here. And I truly thought that was the best at the time. I told myself I'd never move back here. Told myself I'm better off. Felt like I was leaving the past behind me. And In all reality, I didn't. A lot of the past followed me, kept following me. And I then ended up pregnant with my youngest son, and he was born there. And I was then raising 3 kids and trying to work 2 jobs, all while starting to feel betrayal from the person I shouldn't have felt betrayal from. And that's a messy part. Always really told myself, like, I'm not happy in this situation. I'm not happy in this situation. How do I figure out how to get out of this situation? Well, I never could figure out why I stayed, why I kept enduring, why I chose to continue to be treated like that for so long. Terrible, terrible. And I hope in the future I can explain enough to help you to understand that if you are being treated like that, you deserve better. No one should go through a lot of that. It's not a good feeling and it's hurtful. And I hope that if you are going through that, you see it and choose to do what I couldn't, which was leave. I don't know why I couldn't. I still don't know why I couldn't, but I didn't. And later on, you'll hear more of that. Sometimes the mess is just part of the process. And even when it doesn't feel that way yet, it is. This is Nikki, and this is Built from the Mess.